My family said I was a waste of space and made me cook their meals like a servant. They laughed when I burned my hand, called me stupid girl. I left in silence. Last month, they were denied a loan. The banker? Me. I just smiled and said, "You're not approved." I'm a Lyra. I don't know how many people out there grew up in homes where silence was survival, but that was me. Small town Pennsylvania, outskirts of Altoona. A town you'd miss if you blinked too fast driving through. My family was one of those church on Sundays, pride in the name, kinds. Dad owned a small hardware store, the kind with squeaky wooden floors and ceiling fans older than I was. Mom was a homemaker by force, not by choice. She hated cooking, cleaning, and being home. So, she made me do it. I was the youngest of three. My brother, Vance, was the pride of the family. He worked with Dad since high school and always acted like a third parent more than a sibling. My sister, Romalie, was the pretty one. People always said she could have been a model. She flirted with teachers and never lifted a finger around the house. Me? I was the one who got forgotten. They didn't beat me. They didn't scream much. But they didn't see me either. I was the automatic help, the pass me this, clean that, go make dinner, girl. If I hesitated or looked tired, I'd get that look from my mom, the kind of look that told you you'd better pull your weight or else. It was around 13 when I started being responsible for everyone's meals. At first, I didn't mind. I liked the solitude of the kitchen. But it wasn't long before it became a job, not a choice. I'd get home from school and the groceries would be sitting on the counter, unbagged. No note. Just expectation. If dinner wasn't on the table by 6:30, I'd hear snide comments from Vance about being lazy, or worse, Mom would compare me to those girls on welfare. Once, during Thanksgiving, I burned my hand on a baking tray. Badly. Skin blistered and turned red within seconds. I yelped, dropped the stuffing tray, and backed up from the oven. "Romalie?" She laughed. Full-on belly laughed. "Stupid girl," she said, shaking her head. "You can't even handle a casserole." Dad looked up briefly from the game he was watching. "You'll live," was all he said. I wrapped my hand in a cold towel and kept cooking. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have eaten. No one would have made sure I had a plate. That was the moment I knew I didn't matter in that house. I started saving up money that same year. Secretly. I didn't know what for yet. I got a job tutoring a boy in my math class. His mom paid me cash, $20 a session. I lied and told my parents it was for group projects. I also helped out the school librarian during lunch, organizing the archive. She let me keep old textbooks the school didn't want anymore. I read every single one. By 16, I'd memorized FAFSA forms and scholarship deadlines better than I knew my own birthday. I knew I had to get out. Not just for college, but permanently. I knew if I stayed, I'd either become like my mother or break trying not to. They didn't notice I was applying to schools. My counselor helped me quietly. She even paid the application fee to the University of Pittsburgh for me. I didn't tell anyone I got in. I just waited. 2 days after high school graduation, I packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags while everyone was out. I didn't leave a dramatic note. Just 5 words on a torn envelope, "Thanks. Don't wait up. Elira." The first few months in Pittsburgh were terrifying. I shared a dorm room the size of a closet with a girl named Moira who smoked clove cigarettes and studied art history. I lived on instant noodles and slept maybe 4 hours a night. I worked at a bakery at 5 a.m. before class, and then again in the evenings after. Every dollar was a battle. But I was free. I still remember the first time I didn't have to ask permission to eat something. I finished my finance degree early, 3.5 years, with honors. I interned at a local credit union during my senior year and got hired full-time before graduation. I stayed. Worked my way up. Teller to assistant loan officer to regional loan specialist. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. I hadn't seen any of my family since the day I left. Then, a few weeks ago, something happened that I still don't fully know how to feel about. There was a client appointment scheduled at my branch. I usually didn't deal with walk-ins anymore, but one of our junior agents was sick, and I volunteered to cover a few consultations. When I called the names, Vance and Romalie Dunn, I didn't connect the dots immediately. Then they walked in. Vance looked older. puffy, tired, balding in a way that made his scalp shine. Romalie still had that same confidence, but the corners of her mouth pulled downward like the smile was forced. They wore matching polos with a company logo, Done Remodeling and Company. I felt my blood chill. And then heat all at once. They didn't recognize me at first. I stood. Extended my hand. Elira Dunn. Senior Lending Advisor. Please, come in. Vance blinked. Wait, Elira? Romalie started. Is this a joke? I gestured toward my office. Let's talk about your application. They sat across from me in my office like two strangers trying to read a foreign language. My nameplate gleamed on the desk between us, Elira Dunn, Senior Lending Advisor, and I could see them trying to reconcile that title with the barefoot, apron-stained teenager they used to bark orders at. I didn't rush. I let the silence hang. It's funny how the people who once talked over you fall quiet when the power shifts. So, Romalie cleared her throat. You work here? I smiled politely. For 8 years now. Vance tried to laugh it off. Guess you made something of yourself, huh? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the manila folder I'd been handed before their appointment. The application was decent on paper. But not strong. Credit scores hovering just under 650. 2 outstanding personal loans. Their new business had been around for only 18 months, with inconsistent quarterly profits. And they were asking for $140,000. Bold. What made you decide on a remodeling business? I asked casually, eyes on the numbers. Dad taught us a lot about tools, and we figured it was time we used it, Vance said. House flipping hot now. This loan would help us lock in our next 3 contracts. Romalie added, we've got deals lined up already. We just need the capital to move forward. I nodded, jotting a note down. I could feel Romalie's eyes drilling into me, trying to read me. She was never good at hiding her discomfort. So, Vance said again, leaning back in the chair. How's Mom? Have you heard from her? I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me shaken. But the nerve of him asking about the woman who once told me I'd end up in a trailer park if I didn't learn to act useful. I haven't, I replied coolly. We haven't spoken in years. Romalie sighed dramatically. She's not well. Keep saying you abandoned the family. You didn't even show up for Dad's funeral. I didn't answer that either. Because if I opened that door, the years of suppressed pain would flood in. I'd grieved my father the night he asked me why I couldn't be more like Romalie. The day he watched me burn my hand and didn't even offer ice. I turned the folder around so it faced them. Here's the thing. The loan you're asking for, it's high risk. You have unstable cash flow, a limited business history, and too much existing debt. The underwriters will flag this immediately. Vance frowned. But we've got contracts in the pipeline. Pipeline revenue doesn't count unless it's secured with signed agreements. You don't have those. Romalie's voice sharpened. You could help us. I mean, come on. We're your family. I looked directly at her. Family doesn't mean what you think it means. She blinked. What's that supposed to mean? I clasped my hands together on the desk, calm, composed. Romalie, the last time you spoke to me, you laughed while I burned my hand. You called me stupid. I was 16. You've never apologized. Never checked on me. Never even asked where I went. They didn't speak. Vance shifted in his seat, the confidence draining from his face. You treated me like a servant, I continued. No, worse. You didn't even see me as a person. Just someone to do your chores and take the blame when things went wrong. And now, here you are, asking me to help you get $140,000. Vance leaned forward, suddenly defensive. We didn't know you felt that way. You didn't care to know. I stood, slowly. As your loan officer, I'm informing you that based on your application and our lending policies, you are not approved for this loan. Romalie's face hardened. You're doing this on purpose. No. I'm doing my job. This office has standards. And so do I. They left in silence. Not the kind of silence that's peaceful, but the kind that leaves people disoriented. As they walked out, I saw Vance glance over his shoulder one last time. His eyes didn't hold anger. They held recognition. He finally saw me. But I didn't need to be seen anymore. I had built a life outside their shadow. I had found my voice, and more importantly, I had learned when to use it and when to let silence speak louder than anything I could say. I sat back down at my desk and resumed my day as if nothing had happened. Just another appointment. Just another file. But deep down, something in me shifted. The next few days passed quietly, but the interaction kept replaying in my head. I didn't regret what I did. Not for a second. But I would be lying if I said it didn't unearth something sharp and buried. That old ache in my ribs when I remembered the way I used to sit on the floor of our pantry, just to escape the noise of the kitchen. The sound of my name said it was a burden. The silence when I needed someone to say, "Are you okay?" That visit stirred it all up like dust from an attic I thought I'd locked away. 3 days later, I got a call on my work line. I almost didn't pick up. But I saw the area code, 814. Altoona. I let it ring once more before answering. "This is Elira." There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in almost 15 years. "Elira, it's your mother." The voice was weaker. Slower. But unmistakably hers. I felt myself freeze. My brain didn't rush to speak. It just tried to remember how to breathe. "I heard what happened with Vance and Romilly," she said. "They came back fuming. Said you humiliated them." "I did my job," I said flatly. "I didn't call to argue," she said quickly. "I called because I thought. Maybe I didn't treat you right." Not then. There was that word again, maybe. Maybe. The same word she used when I was 12 and asked why she never hugged me. Maybe I'm just not affectionate. When I turned 17 and told her I was depressed. "Maybe you're being dramatic." I let her words hang in the air. They didn't comfort me. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. What I felt, strangely, was relief. Because her voice didn't carry power over me now. It was just a voice. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," she added. "I just needed to say something while I still have the time." It was only then that I realized she sounded tired. Weary in a way that was hard to fake. I wondered if she was sick. I wondered if this was the start of some terminal admission, a deathbed confession of sorts. But I didn't ask. I didn't need to know. "Thank you for the call," I said calmly. "But I don't need anything from you." And I meant it. Later that week, I was walking to the parking garage when I noticed a letter tucked under my windshield wiper. No envelope. Just a single folded sheet of lined paper, like something pulled from a notebook in haste. I looked around. The garage was mostly empty. Whoever left it was long gone. I opened the note. "You could have helped us. Family doesn't turn their back like that. You're bitter and spiteful, and you'll always be that same sad girl in the kitchen, no matter what title you have. Don't pretend you're better than us. R. No signature necessary." I stared at the handwriting, so distinct with its perfect round loops, like hearts that had turned bitter. "Romilly." I didn't crumple the note. I folded it again, placed it in my purse, and drove home in silence. That weekend, I found myself driving. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. I hadn't been back to Altoona in over a decade. But that morning, I woke up, showered, put on jeans and a sweater, and drove. I didn't even tell anyone where I was going. The town looked smaller, more worn than I remembered. Storefronts boarded up. Sidewalks cracked. The old pizza place where I worked my first summer job was now a vape shop. I parked 3 blocks from my childhood home and walked. The house looked the same. Peeling white paint. The porch swing still squeaked when the wind hit it. I stopped at the edge of the property, not stepping onto the lawn. From where I stood, I could see the kitchen window. I imagined the younger version of myself inside, hunched over the sink, rinsing rice or chopping onions with a wrapped-up burn on my palm. I stood there for a few minutes, breathing in the strange feeling of distance. Then the door opened. Vance. He didn't see me at first. He came out carrying a trash bag, tied tight. Walked to the bin at the end of the driveway. He looked older, wearier. No sign of the loud, laughing bully I remembered. When he turned to go back, he caught sight of me. We locked eyes. He paused mid-step, one hand on the railing. "Elira?" he called. I didn't answer. He took a step forward. "What are you doing here?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I wanted to see it one last time." "You could have just knocked." "I didn't come for that." There was a beat of awkward silence. He looked down, rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I know we weren't great to you. But you turned your back on us too." I nodded. "Yeah. I did. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't have survived." Vance shifted, like he wanted to protest but couldn't find the words. I took a breath. "I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not coming back. Not here. Not ever." And I turned and walked away. I drove back to Pittsburgh that night, not feeling victorious or satisfied. Just grounded. It wasn't revenge. Not really. It was just the truth. They needed something from me, and I didn't give it to them, not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to give. I had built a life with no help from any of them. And when they needed me, all they saw was a gatekeeper. But I was more than that. I was the girl they underestimated. I was the girl who walked out and made her own way. And when they finally looked up, they realized I was the one holding the key. I didn't hear from any of them again for a while after that brief encounter with Vance. No letters. No calls. Not even another anonymous note. I figured maybe I had finally made myself clear enough. Then, one morning at the office, I got an internal email. A heads up from our compliance team. Apparently, Dunn Remodeling and Company had applied for a business credit line at another branch of our bank. Same institution, different advisor. I guess they thought they could bypass me. They hadn't listed me as a known relative this time. I stared at the file for a long moment before deciding what to do next. Let me explain something about the banking world. When you apply for a loan or credit with a bank, there's a cross-verification process, especially for businesses. Previous application history, internal notes, inconsistencies. It's not uncommon for different departments to flag and refer applicants if they notice red flags or familiar names. Since they were attempting to work around their original declined application, I had the right to submit a formal notice under our internal policy, flagging the duplicate application. But here's the part that mattered: I didn't just flag it. I requested a full audit. I wrote a detailed internal report citing inconsistencies in their projected income versus actual deposits, errors in how they reported collateral on the original application, and outlined their attempt to circumvent the chain of review by applying at a different branch without disclosing prior rejection. They had essentially tried to fudge the numbers. Not egregiously, but enough to raise eyebrows. My report triggered a soft investigation, not criminal, but enough to stall their entire process. Their application was suspended for review. Their business accounts were frozen pending verification of their cash flow claims. That stalled any renovations or material orders they had planned. I didn't twist the knife. I didn't call them. I didn't gloat. I let the system work, because for once, I had the system on my side. 2 weeks later, Romalie showed up at my branch. Not for an appointment. Just showed up. She didn't ask to speak to me. She waited in the lobby until I came out of a meeting and caught sight of her. Her face was red, anger, maybe embarrassment, and she stood the second she saw me. "You had something to do with this," she said, voice trembling. "I reviewed the policy and did what was required," I said evenly. "You applied under false pretenses." Her hands curled into fists at her sides. "You always were a vindictive little brat." I looked at her calmly. "And you always counted on me not standing up for myself. Looks like we've both changed." She was shaking, but she didn't cry. She wasn't the crying type. "You think this makes you better than us?" she spat. "That desk, that title? Do you think it means anything?" I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me without the whole lobby listening. My voice was low, firm. "No, Romalie. What makes me better is that I got out. I built something. Without stepping on anyone to do it. And when the time came to help you, I could have lied. I could have sabotaged you. But I didn't. I told the truth. The truth was enough." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked out without another word. I heard through the grapevine later that Dunn Remodeling never took off. With their credit frozen and contracts delayed, they had to let go of 2 workers and downsize their plans. Eventually, they dissolved the company altogether. Vance went back to working part-time at a hardware store. Romalie moved to Harrisburg to live with a friend. It was done. No courtroom drama. No shouting matches. Just quiet consequences. And me? I moved forward. I bought a condo not far from the university where I got my degree. I started mentoring first-gen college students through a nonprofit. I even began baking again, something I hadn't done in years. This time, not because anyone told me to. Just because I wanted to. Sometimes, when I light the oven, I think about that night in my parents' kitchen. The sting of my burned hand. The way no one moved to help me. And then I think about the lone form. The power I held. Not to hurt. But to protect what I'd built. To protect the girl I used to be. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was sitting behind a desk, wearing a name badge with the name they used to mock. It was being the gatekeeper of opportunity, and choosing integrity when they never did.